Villagers with host Denise Campbell.
Mongolia had lots of poverty after the 1990s. Before the 1990s, there was socialism, and after the 1990s, they changed to a democratic party. The politics are changing, and this means that people's lives are changing as well.
For 70 years, Mongolia has been under the communist domination, as it were, from Soviet Russia. For the last 10 years, they have been independent, but they have introduced a free market economy. It's become a capitalistic country, and so extreme poverty is the order of the day.
30% of its budget was straight transfers from the Soviet Union until 1990. That stopped overnight, and since then, the international community has stepped in to fill the void.
Today, we're going to travel to Mongolia in northern Asia. Since 1994, ADRA Canada, along with other Canadian agencies such as World Vision, Canadian Save the Children Fund, and the Canadian Cooperative Association, have joined Mongolia in the daunting task of birthing a new kind of democratic freedom in the wake of the departure of the Soviet Union regime in 1990. These non-governmental organizations, NGOs as they are called, have been very much welcomed by the Mongolian people as they attempt to survive a new level of poverty, a drought that has lasted years, and very little infrastructure upon which to build an economy and a safety net for themselves.
Canada's NGOs, with the NGO community in general, are key players in the development of Mongolia. The NGO communities are doing most of the grassroots development, as they do in all countries. They're the ones out in the field. They're the groups that are reaching the people.
Mongolia, in all of Asia, is the most impoverished country, I would say. The most impoverished country that you will see in Asia. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, Mongolia was sort of set free. And set free with a lot of problems. A lot of social, economic problems, a lot of agricultural problems. The most difficult challenges that Mongolia faces is feeding its people, feeding its animals, and just basic survival. Right at this moment in time. If they can get past the basic survival, they will be able to develop in the future. But the basic survival is crucial. And that's where I think most development agencies have come into in Mongolia to help them do that.
Mongolia is located in the landlocked plateau between Russian Siberia and the plains of northern China, a rugged land of semi-desert plains and mountains, and severe winters which last up to 8 months. A country of ancient nomads, it was the heart of the powerful 13th century Mongolian Empire under Genghis Khan, which extended from China to the Caspian Sea. With a present-day population of 2.5 million, 40% of its population lives below the poverty line, with the lowest 10% of income earners sharing only 3% of the economy.
They've suffered severe drought conditions and then flooding and very severe winters in Mongolia. And as a result of that, many people have lost a lot of their livestock, a lot of their herds.
If you don't have cattle, you don't have anything. And a lot of them lost their cattle during the disaster. Therefore, they didn't have anything. There was no income, so what the children did, they ran away to the streets.
There are many street kids. Usually the street kids live outside. During the winter time, they usually try to find a warm place and to survive themselves the harsh winter.
Working alongside Mongolia's poorest people, the NGOs are helping to sort out priorities in housing, nutrition, and literacy.
In 1994-95, somebody approached this office here in Canada to say that there was a great need for improved housing. They burn a terrific lot of coal to heat their homes, many thousands of tons of coal, and as a result, the pollution is quite extreme, especially around the city area. So we did some investigating, and we came up with what we call our straw bale housing project, and it has had some phenomenal success.
Straw has always been burnt and considered useless. Now, for the first time, people have seen that they need to do more about insulating their homes. So this technology has been taught to over 350 builders and engineers.
The amount of coal that is burnt has dropped by 40%. It means they have more money to buy food and clothing. They don't have to put so much of it into heating for survival, and a lot less pollution in the countryside. So that was basically our first step into Mongolia.
It was the children living with no housing at all, the street children, that next caught the attention of the development agencies. The drought and the loss of the animals caused people to give up their traditional nomadic lives and move to the ever more overcrowded squatter communities outside the capital city of Ulaanbaatar. There, they face more poverty, not even having enough to feed their own children.
Most of the parents of the kids, they are just unemployed. They just moved from the countryside, or they are just educated not well. So it's very difficult to find a good job for them to feed their kids.
The older children often leave home, drop out of school, and head for a life of petty crime and finding shelter in the city's sewers.
The number of the street kids are just increasing. They usually kids, some of the kids have family problems. Their family break or just violence, and so it affected them to flee from their home. Street kids usually are just hungry and thirsty, and they don't have enough clothes to wear. They steal some stuff from the business people, and then they just sell it and buy some food to just feed themselves.
To get the kids qualified to go back to school, the NGOs began tutoring classes.
I enrolled in the tutoring program for a month, and now I'm in the state school system. It is all so different. When I was on the street, I had no friends. Now I have friends to play with, and we do our homework together. I'm very happy and very thankful that this has happened.
The ultra-poor tutoring program has targeted these children that are living on the streets and living in the sewers to try and reintegrate them back into the school system. And what we are doing is running 5 training centers that are in different communities that are addressing the education of these children.
When we just started this tutoring program, we just teach them some basic math, Mongolian language, and some subjects. We made a lot of differences for these families or for these kids. Children are our future, so that we have to work, or we have to help the kids to become a good adults in the future.
We had one story that a lady came in and she wanted to keep her children in school. And she had this idea about collecting bottles. And so she came to the ADRA Mongolia staff and asked them, if they thought this would be a good idea for her and could they loan her $20 US. She went out and she collected all the bottles at the different restaurants, and she came back about a month later with $80 US. And so excited because she could keep her kids in school.
To get the kids to go back to their families and their homes, they started an extensive program of job training for the parents.
Children don't have to pay tuition, but what they do have to pay is for their school books, and they have to have clothing and, of course, food to eat. And if we can help the parents to supply this, then we will have no problem. We'd like to, in the future, even do some training in woodwork, welding, motor mechanics, to ensure that these folks are able to get enough income to be able to support their children in school.
We just have a hairdressing or skill training. We just involve some of the mothers and sisters from our kids to be involved in this hairdressing skill. Once they just completed this hairdressing the program or the skill training, of course it's easy to them just to find a job or to find a job and to feed the kids. We decided to have the garden component and to help them to generate the income or to have some food, at least for their family members.
The plight of the school-aged children living in the streets alerted the Canadian aid workers to a food and nutrition crisis shared by almost all Mongolians. The solution? It's called a bio-intensive approach to gardening. Bio-intensive because Mongolians are learning to use every day of sunlight available to them by planting indoors and outdoors, and because their fertilizers are non-chemical, coming from compost they make themselves. The first step was to help people establish fruit and vegetable gardens. Each little change brought more change. The gardens had to be fenced in to protect them from grazing animals. The people had to learn to like new foods, grains and leafy vegetables in place of their previous all-meat diets, and how to cook them, how to preserve them for the winter months.
Gardening was a very important part of training people and getting them into a livelihood. What we plan to do is train 50 families in each Sum, which is like a town in Mongolia. Last year we trained 3 towns, 50 families in each, 150 families. And these in turn are supposed to train 5 others, share the ideas with 5 other families. So as a result, we have quite a few families benefited. Hopefully in the years to come, many more families will learn these techniques and methods and be self-sufficient.
Before the drought, people lived on meat, on beef, on stews, and that's what their diet was like. But when there is no beef, when there is no livestock to kill, what do? Where do you go? You are hungry. So ADRA came up with a program or a project in biointensive whereby you grow crops, and this is not done in just for one season, but many crop cycles throughout the year.
We're doing training in cooking schools, educating them on how to use those foods, to dry them, to preserve them, so that this becomes a diet that they have all year round and not just in the summer.
Before this, they had lacked in vitamin A, C, and D, and some other nutrients that they were not getting. But with this new program, they are a lot healthier. And because they are healthier, their children's healthier, they can learn better, their schoolwork is better.
After the first year of growing new vegetables, the Mongolians were then ready to learn the next level of techniques of seed preservation and soil enrichment. The first step was to establish community greenhouses where vegetables could be grown year-round and where seedlings could be developed.
The whole community uses this greenhouse. This is very good for Mongolian people because vegetables are very expensive. In winter, vegetables are very rare.
We are taught how to make a compost pile and taught to increase the soil fertility. We can make a higher yield and take it to sell. The best thing is the difference it makes to people's health, especially children and old people, when they eat more vegetables and meat.
The biointensive is aimed at making use of this 260 days of sunlight, the lovely black soil, the lovely water that flows in the rivers, and the plentiful manure that is thrown out of the little enclosures that the animals sleep in at night. So all we need to do is supply the seeds.
Some of the seeds were sent from Canada. We sent a container of seeds, and I tell you, they went crazy over that. They thought it was like Christmas to get those seeds.
The biointensive gardening project also teaches the seed regeneration, which helps them to maintain those seeds. So really it's the education of a people with a tool that they will have for their lifetime, because they can teach their children.
We saw them trying today for the first time beans. You could see that none of the participants had ever tried a bean before, and they were being taught not just how to grow the vegetables, but also how to eat them or prepare them so that they enjoy them. So it's a very holistic approach, and I think it's a fantastic project, and I'm proud that Canada Fund is part of it.
The next step was to come up with a grain seed that would be able to survive the Mongolian climate, provide another missing ingredient in the Mongolian diet, and hopefully go on to becoming a cash crop for the farmers. The answer was quinoa, an amazing food source whose cultivation is as old as the South American Inca culture of 3,000 years ago.
It's been, used in a lot of countries where they have extreme temperatures, very short growing seasons, and need something that's very resistant and very hardy and can survive in those types of situations. So it's a very exciting product.
Since the quinoa project started, our lives has been changed. We also learned how to use quinoa in the kitchen in different kinds of cuisines and tea. We were also able to make the quinoa flour, and we noticed that quinoa gives us high calories that we need. All of us realized that quinoa can be extremely useful for our daily life.
My name is Davahu, and I have 5 children. I was working in factory until 1995, and after I was unemployed. I cooked quinoa during the winter because the children like it a lot, and it's very nutritious, lots of vitamins. I'm really excited to be involved in this project. I have seeds for planting this year, and year after year I will plant. I love quinoa.
Quinoa tastes very nice and it is very healthy. I like it. The animals like it. I have seen very weak animals become strong after eating it.
You can eat the seeds, you can eat the leaves. It's very nutritious. They are now using it with their own corn, mixing it with their own products, eating it like spinach. And they are finding new recipes for it. And it's becoming a lot more common than it ever used to be.
When they boiled it, the water became soapy, so then they could use it to wash their dishes, wash their floor, wash their hair. It's so easy to grow and so easy to harvest, and has so much good, nutrient and so much, really it's like the answer to Mongolia's food security in a lot of ways.
Mongolia is moving on. Now, just a few years into the process of tremendous change, Mongolia is making real progress, rediscovering their traditions in music, dance, and Buddhist spirituality, but also accepting new ways of living that will help them as they move into the future. Like many traditional societies, Mongolia's changes begin with a new respect and a new role for its women.
We encourage the women to be involved in the program. They're involved in the various meetings and the training sessions. Women like that sense of community, and in giving them the opportunity to be together with other women, other families, and the sharing of problems, sharings of issues, there's an opportunity to further develop what they would like to see in their society and to give them a voice in that.
The families now have a future. They have children that can earn a living, so they don't have to stay out in the desert, in the cold. They can go into the cities, into the towns, or make a shop, have a shop of their own. And a lot of them learn skills. They can do something else with the education that they have. They can read, they can write.
The exciting thing that I have found is that you start at the very bottom, speak to people, find out what their needs are, and come in as unobtrusively as possible, have them identify their needs and problems, and ask them what they can do in solving their own problems.
With the advent of and the acceptance of more and more development agencies that are getting involved in Mongolia, they're finding that they can improve their agriculture, they can improve their housing, they can improve many different things.
They've undergone a massive transition here in the last 10 years from democratization plus market reforms. But really what they have now, the government is shooting for, is to consolidate the market reforms, the economic reforms, bring the economy into check, and they hope, and we must agree, I think, that by helping the economy develop, they will become less aid dependent.
It's so great that a country like Canada, who is free and who is able to support itself, should lend a hand to a younger brother who has just come into democracy. Mongolians seem to be a strong, resilient people. They have said to us, we don't want aid, we want work. And I think this sums up the feelings of just about everybody.